how to actually choose a program, because I know a lot of people, particularly those in senior undergraduates and as well as in a master's program, they're kind of confused. They don't know where to go and what to choose. And this was my own experience. I went through this exact same thing. It was really confusing. I applied to several different programs because I wasn't quite sure what I wanted to do. But now that I'm here, I'm a professor of innovation strategy and entrepreneurship. I think I found my calling at this point and really enjoy what I'm doing. But I also want to help out other people in choosing and sort of rationally think through what is the right steps to move forward. So with that, I'm going to jump right into it at this point. So the things that you should be doing, the first thing that you should do with choosing a graduate program is make a list. What you should do is get a spreadsheet or just a regular old piece of paper, just like this, right? You could write on a regular old piece of paper and make a list. List out the different programs. First thing that you should do is choose the different programs that you're interested in. What are the different programs? So maybe it's humanities, maybe it is science, maybe it is a certain type of science. And science can be broken down in all these different categories. You list those out, and then you get 3 to 5 different criteria of things that you're interested in. Or things that you think matter. And I'll get into some of the criteria that I think really do matter in choosing your program. Because there's a lot of mishmash out there that don't necessarily matter in terms of your career prospects. That's what I'm thinking about, is choosing the right career for you. And this is kind of a way to get to a stepping stone in actually going in the right direction. So listing those criteria, put those different programs on there, and then just check off which ones actually cover those. And you might get 1 or 2 that actually cover those different criteria, and sort of check off that way. That is a very rational decision making, and that's a very rational way of doing a decision process. This is actually what you get taught if you did an MBA, of how to actually make decisions. And it is a very nice way, because you end up with this nice result at the end that is very clear and well-defined. And in these moments, it is a great way, in these moments when you're making these sort of big, large life decisions, it is a great way to think through, and rationally choose that process. I know a lot of people don't rationally choose that. And in fact, there's a huge research program and people have won the Nobel Prizes on how people don't sort of think rationally at this moment. But I'm going to suggest that you should sit down and think through this in a rational sense. Just sort of rank order the different alternatives and come up with different criteria to choose those different programs. So this is really important for you to do. It's a major step in your life in order to choose this, and you're going to be spending a lot of money. It's very expensive to do this. So I'm going to give you a sort of framework in how to choose, particularly for research. If you're interested in doing research, this is really relevant, as well as if you're doing any sort of an MBA program, for example, or a master's program, something like that as well. So what are the different criteria that I think are very, very important for research? And this is based on, reading. There is a field of people that actually do research and sort of understand, what are the best places to go to, as well as from me just being in academia for a while and sort of having a perspective on this. I didn't know any of this stuff when I started out, and I was kind of really, really green. And I wish I had. I wish there was somebody out there on YouTube that was telling me. YouTube didn't exist at the time. But I wish that there was somebody that was kind of helping me out along the way and sort of rationally thinking through this, because it would have been very helpful and it would have made my life a lot easier in choosing different programs. So what you should be looking for, the first and foremost criteria that I guarantee this is the number one thing that you should be doing, because everything else is irrelevant if you get this wrong. The first one is thinking about your financial prospects and thinking about what's this program going to do to me in 5-10 years out of that program. That is really incredibly important. There's 2 things that you should be looking at, because a lot of programs and a lot of institutions will hide these, or they won't tell you these kind of things. I'm just going to be honest here and sort of disclose what these are. And if it's a pretty reputable place, they will disclose these and they will tell you exactly what these numbers are. The first one is sometime in the future after you graduate from the program, whether it's 5 years, 1 year, 10 years out, what is the average salary that a person makes from doing that program? And that is incredibly important, the average salary of what they're going to make. And what you're looking for, sort of, from what I understand in the economics literature and whatnot, for every year that you do a post-secondary education, so from undergraduate studies, every single year should equate to roughly about $5,000 to $10,000 more in your added salary going forward. Right, so if you've done 10 years of university, you should probably get about $100,000. It's kind of a rough estimate of what you should be making at the end of it. If you did, if you did 5 years of university, it should be equal to about $50,000 worth of your annual salary going forward. It kind of works pretty close. Sometimes it doesn't work all that well. And if you're really far from any of those, there's some programs that are going to be really far off in terms of being below that. And I'm not going to tell you which ones they are. Maybe it's basket weaving, right? Doing a PhD in basket weaving. They're going to be really, really low on those numbers. And that's probably not a really good rational choice to choose because you're making such a large investment. So myself, I was an engineer when I started the PhD program. And now I did a PhD in a master's or a PhD in business administration from the University of Western Ontario. You look up where that is, it's in Canada. And it panned out pretty well for me. I'm happy where I'm at. I'm at a great institution in Florida. But if you look at the sort of financial prospects, as an engineer, I did my own rational calculation and calculated what was the investment for doing this PhD. And it put me, so I'm gonna break even with a good salary at an American university. I'm going to break even by the time I'm about 50 from choosing whether to stay as an engineer compared to doing this route. So it's really, really expensive. If you think about the time, what's called the time value of money, if you do something for an X amount of time, you're not earning any money in that point of time as a researcher or a PhD student, as well as that money compounds over time. And you would learn about this in business school if you were interested in it. But it basically compounds over time. It's worth a lot of money by not working in that period. So if you compound it over that time, for me, it was break even in between 50 and 60 years old by the time I actually break even with this. So you have to be very, very passionate of what you're doing, but then also think about the financial prospects. If it's way below anything like that, it's going to sting when you get out because it's going to be really, really hard to pay off all of the debt that you accrued, all of this extra stuff. And if the salary is just not there, then you probably shouldn't pursue it. And there is a huge variance across a university of the programs that make a tremendous amount of money, those that graduate from that and don't make nearly as much money and not even close, right? And often what you'll find out is here's the crazy thing is that in some programs, and in a lot of programs, because science is kind of universal, it doesn't matter where you are, you might end up doing the exact same research in this one type of discipline as somebody else, and that other discipline is making twice as 3 times as much as that sort of other discipline over here, right? So that's something you have to really think about. You're doing the exact same research just because you're in a different school. It does make a huge difference. Or, just because you graduated with this particular degree, it's going to make a huge difference compared to that degree in what you actually do. And in the end, your salary is going to be hugely different, but you're going to be doing the exact same thing. So this should be something that you should very, very much consider. That's so important that a lot of people overlook, and it's probably a number one thing because a lot of people get into trouble from not doing that. So the second thing that you should be asking about with the financial concerns is how many people, by the time when they start, and how many people actually graduate and get a job. because you'll find out graduate school is this, it weeds out a lot of people. A lot of people just can't get through the program for whatever reason. And some of them are a lot more severe than others. And you should be very, very concerned about that because that's going to hurt your financial prospects, right? And it's going to make a huge difference on what happens in your career going forward. If you do graduate school for 3 or 4 years and don't end up sort of completing that degree, then you got to go default to what you were doing before. That was a whole waste. It was a lot of money. You learned a lot. I guarantee you will learn a lot, but then financially speaking, you're not going to gain that much from it. And it's going to be very, very harmful actually for you to choose that. So you should be looking at that as well. What is the sort of number of people that make it through? And no, not everybody makes it through. It's actually really, really it's only a small amount that makes it through at most programs. I don't know what the estimates are at my institution, but I would say on average across the academy, only 50% of the people that start a PhD program ever make it through. The other thing that you should be thinking about, so this is the second criteria that you should be thinking about other than financial prospects, is thinking about your potential supervisor and who you're going to work with. You should be looking at the publications that they have. So all of this really, really matters in terms of getting a job in any sort of research area, but also sort of getting a quality education. And the way that you look at that is look at the number of publications they have, but not only the number of publications they have, but as well as the good publications that they have. So the good ones, the top tier, what are called top tier, there's a huge difference. And a lot of people don't realize this huge difference between the lower tier journals and the higher tier journals and the amount of effort and skill and everything that requires to get the higher tier journals. So you got to look at, in that field that you're choosing to get into, what are the top tier journals, right? A couple of easy ones that are universal across all of most programs: Science and Nature. In biology, things like Cell are really, really popular. In my field, Organization Science, Administrative Science Quarterly, Strategic Management Journal. There's a bunch that are very, very highly rated. And you got to look at those ones and see which ones are the top tier. And you sort of have to go through, okay, can this professor, does he perform at the top tier level? Is that going to, how many of those has he been able to get or she been able to get? That's really important to think about that in that process. The other thing you should look at is, do they have a track record of working with graduate students? That is really, really important. It often will be the case that some people are much better working with graduate students than others, and it's just because of their personality, and you should be looking at that, of where they're placing, what they're doing, and all that kind of stuff with the graduate students, what they're doing, and see if that's going to be you when you choose that program, right? You want to be that particular person. And there's a bunch of different strategies that people choose with that, but basically you want to be looking to place at the best possible places possible, especially if you want to do a PhD and you want to go into research. You want to place at the best academic institution possible. Sometimes you go into industry, which might be, maybe working at the U.S. Federal Reserve, for example, and getting into a program like that is still very, very reputable, and you should be looking at that. Where they are placing, the potential supervisors placing, as well as they should be, if you have a couple of interviews with them and you get a bad vibe, don't work with them. I mean, that is key. If that's what the relationship's going to be, it's going to be a long time. It's like a marriage. You are going to be stuck with this person for a long, long time. And if that relationship doesn't work, if it doesn't gel, then you should probably pursue something else. And just take that. You shouldn't just go to somebody just because that they are X or Y, but you should go to them because you enjoy working with them. It's a very long relationship, and you do learn a lot, and you have sort of a lot of things in common after a while. The third thing that is important to think about when you're going into a graduate program and to list as your criteria when you're ranking both your program as well as the institution is the status of the institution. So institutions, I didn't realize this going into the program, going into the PhD, there's a huge sort of status divide between institutions. If you want to get into a research program, in the first job that you get, or first couple of jobs that you get, the status of the institution does matter for getting a job. And the reason is that's kind of like a screen at the beginning that people do look at that status and where they're coming from, and that will help you get a job at the end. So if you graduate from the most prestigious university around, it's going to be easier to get a job at the end of it compared to one that's sort of lower status, and you might get the exact same education, but it's going to be harder to get a job out of it. The other thing that you have to remember is that sort of financial prospects of that and the scholarships and stuff are going to be fundamentally different between those different institutions. You'll have to be very, very aware of that. Sometimes it's tricky. High status institutions sometimes actually don't pay well. Sometimes they pay really, really well. You just have to investigate that and understand how much, and that's just kind of get you through that sort of 4 to 7 year gap. And on average, I would say a PhD takes about 5.5 years to complete at most institutions these days. Plus, it's common to do postdocs and stuff like that. So you have to sort of figure out what is the salary that you need, the stipend that you need to get through for those years. And you're going to be living really poor, probably below the poverty rate. And unfortunately, that's kind of really what the PhD program is about it. And it's not going to change anytime soon. The other thing to think about is the location. And the reason I raise this is not because it matters in terms of research prospects and, getting a job at the end of it. That's really kind of irrelevant in this day and age. You can do a PhD in Japan. You can do a PhD in China. And there are amazing researchers, Japan and China, Australia, all around the world. There's amazing, amazing researchers that are at the top of their game, and then they know a lot of people, and they can sort of make connections and get you to any other institution around. However, if you are doing a PhD, you should be thinking about the location because it matters for your family and family concerns and all of that kind of stuff. So if you do have a family, a significant other, if you're looking to find a significant other, it really does matter where you go to. If you are in a small, tiny town and you don't have a significant other and you're looking to find somebody, it's going to be harder, of course, in a small, tiny town. As we know, cities are easier to find significant others. If you're in a big place, in a big city, and you have a large family, it's going to be tight because you're not making a lot of money and it's expensive. Cost of living is really expensive in those cities. So you kind of have to find the sweet spot, because what's going to happen if there are problems at home, and this is pretty well documented, right, in a lot of sort of HR research. If there's problems in HR's human resource and organizational behavior research, if there's problems at home, it's going to trickle into the organization. It's going to trickle into you. It's going to put pressure on you. Some people actually perform better if there is this sort of pressure. They are going to get things done quicker. But a lot of people are going to have what's called a threat rigidity response, and they're not going to perform all that well. Because of that, and their performance is going to fall. So that's all I have to say about choosing your graduate school and program. Hopefully that was helpful to some of you. I wish I had this advice going into the program, and because maybe I guaranteed I probably would have chose the same school, but I also would have sort of thought about it a little bit more rationally going through the program. And what I also wanted to tell you about was reciprocity, and why I'm doing this is because I want to actually take some of the money eventually if it ever becomes profitable. I don't know at this point. It's really not, but I don't really care at this moment. If it ever becomes profitable, because I love doing these videos, by the way, if it ever becomes profitable, what I want to do is actually start giving some of that money away to PhD scholarships, particularly in behavioral science, because I think that's cool, and I think it's awesome to be able to do that and to be generous and to help out, graduate school students in doing something like this. So it's kind of really what my main motivation is with this. I want to help out people as much as I possibly can, and this is a great way because it's scalable to help out people. And so it's a sharing economy proofreading platform where you can just, get your documents proofread, any sort of things. Yeah, maybe it's an application, for example, a PhD application. There has been some people that have done that. They put it on there, and then it goes out to somebody else, gets assigned to somebody else, and then they do it, and it comes back, and they get, they get it proofread by somebody else on the crowd on the cloud, where they're just kind of looking at somebody that wants to be helpful, and that there are editors and stuff like that are on there, legitimate editors that are on there, as well as other people that are wanting to be helpful. So that's all I wanted to say. If you like these videos, you can do the old ding ding, or you can do the I don't really care either way. If you want to help out with reciprocity, you can go onto the website, or you can actually, and the E is spelled with a 3, by the way, when you're doing reciprocity, writing it down. Or you can watch the old videos, some of the old ones, because that does help out in a lot of different ways, and particularly with, getting the search engines to find these videos. So that's it. Hopefully you enjoyed it. And do take care and have a good day. And I am looking forward to seeing you on the next video. Bye.